Hello and good evening. We are coming to you live from Rwanda's capital here in Kigali. Many thanks for joining us on today's news on RwandaTV. Before I begin tonight's edition, our thoughts are with survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi during these difficult times. As we pause to reflect and honor over 1 million lives lost during the genocide, from me and everyone at RwandaTV, we wish you continued strength and hope. I'm Ethan Tashibia. These are our top stories tonight. President Paul Kagame has said that Rwanda may be small in size but big on justice, denouncing those who criticize the country's justice system, pointing out that no revenge was ever sought for atrocities that were committed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Also tonight, across the country and across the world, different dignitaries, Rwandans living in the diaspora and friends of Rwanda joined the country in commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. Now, tonight, as we bring you a story of one of Nawiha Marishantal who left behind and orphaned with their siblings by the genocide against the Tutsi. Many thanks for joining us for tonight's broadcast. I'm Ethan Tashobia. Let's dive deep into our details. Now, as Rwandans mark 28 years since the genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi, President Paul Kagame has said that Rwanda may be small in size but big on justice. He was denouncing those who criticize the country's justice system. The head of state emphasized that there is no death penalty in Rwanda and no revenge was ever sought for the atrocities that were committed back in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Serge Nore kicks off tonight's edition with this very report.
The ceremony to mark the start of the week of mourning and 100 days of remembrance took place at the Kigali Genocide Memorial at Gisozi, where His Excellency Paul Kagame and Her Excellency Jeannette Kagame paid their respects at the graves of the more than 250,000 victims of the genocide against the Tutsi buried there, and also lit the flame of remembrance. In his address, the President of the Republic reflected on the choice Rwandans made all those years ago and the difference it has made.
Imagine if those of us who were carrying arms if we had allowed ourselves to pursue those who were killing our people, indiscriminately, and also killed them. First of all, we would be right to do so. But we didn't. We spared them. Some of them are still living today in their homes, in their villages. Others are in the government, they're doing business. Some of those who are responsible.
Other speakers at the event pointed out that what happened here in Rwanda back in 1994 was not an accident, and instead an evil plan that had been in the works for decades before that. The formation of what was called a national army, and yet the Tutsi were excluded, is among the reasons that starting in 1959 the Tutsi were killed and the soldiers did nothing to stop it. If anything, they would participate in the murders. Starting in 1959, the government instilled a culture of harassing the Tutsi, and it became a national policy. Every day the Tutsi were victimized and the general public became accustomed to it, incorporating it into their way of life. Victimizing the Tutsi became a regular occurrence that went unpunished, and some even considered it patriotic to do such things. The genocide that was perpetrated in 1994 came concluding that policy. Genocide survivors remember all too well what that conclusion was, even those who were merely children like Jean Nepo, Sibomana, who was 9 years old when the genocide against the Tutsi was implemented. On the morning of the 11th, the soldiers came in, wearing bullet chains and armed. They searched the entire church and surrounding areas in the banana plantations, anywhere a person could hide. They then unleashed the Interahamwe militia upon us and they started hacking people to death. I was fortunate to see my mother for the last time. She gave me 1,405 Rwandan francs and told me to take care of my younger brothers if I survived. But I never saw any of them again. As they hacked us to pieces, the soldiers stood guard at the front of the church. Local leaders would come with lists to check that those that were not killed in their areas were at the church and had been murdered. I recognized our local leader, Jabizimungu, and Kiziguros called Kamali. They hacked people until they were exhausted, and there was a lot of blood, mixed with the falling rain. Testimonies like this and the fact that Rwanda still made a decision to abolish the death penalty afterwards are among the things that make the country truly special.
We are a small country, but we are big on justice. And some of those are big and powerful countries, but they are very small on justice. They have no lessons to teach anyone because they are part of this history that saw over 1 million of our people perish. Needed them to speak out, to speak up, to come to their help.
The head of state also took the time to commend all Rwandans for choosing life despite the terrible things the country experienced, finding the courage not only to go on but to prosper as well.
I cannot end without thanking leaders of our country, the citizens of our country, the young people who still find it in themselves to be normal human beings, given what has happened to them. I'm really surprised that we have so many of these who still find in themselves the energy to live the way lives should be lived as normal human beings. Not anybody deciding for us what and how to be.
In addition to the ceremony that took place at Gisozi at national level, other events were also held at the settlement level across the country.
Thank you, sir, for that report. Now, across the world, different dignitaries, Rwandans living in India, diaspora and friends of Rwanda joined Rwandans for the 28th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. We have this report.
Among those to relay a message of support to Rwandans on Thursday was the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres.
Genocide was neither an accident nor unavoidable. It was deliberate, systematic, and carried out in broad daylight. No one who followed world affairs or watched the news could deny the sickening violence taking place. Yet, too few spoke out, and fewer still tried to intervene. Much more could have and should have been done. A generation after the events, the stain of shame endures. As we remember the bloodshed 28 years ago, we recognize that we always have a choice to choose humanity over hatred, compassion over cruelty, courage over complacency, and reconciliation over rage.
Other officials to express solidarity with Rwandans included President Macky Sall of Senegal, who is the current chairman of the African Union. And across the globe, Rwandans living in the diaspora and friends of Rwanda took the time to remember the victims of the genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi. And messages were delivered by the country's ambassadors, focusing on the importance of remembering what happened. Canada's Prime Minister, in his message, noted that the world should learn from what happened in Rwanda. And the Secretary General of the EAC also expressed the community's solidarity with Rwandans. Tanzania's Minister of Foreign Affairs expressed her country's support for Rwandans in their push for development and emphasized the need to promote harmony. Messages continued to pour in on Thursday, including from the players of the English Premier League side Arsenal that posted a video on Twitter that, among other things, commended genocide survivors for their courage.
Thank you, Serge, for that report. Now, across the country on Thursday, local residents participated in discussions organized at the local level to mark the commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. This being the first time such gatherings have happened in 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. After the discussions, local residents were also able to listen to the address given by the President of the Republic. Other officials who gave speeches in different parts of the country emphasized the need for young people not to tolerate genocide ideologies and denounce anyone who propagates them. Now, gratitude was also expressed for the sacrifice of the soldiers of what used to be the Rwanda Patriotic Army who fought to stop the genocide against the Tutsi and liberate the country. The week of mourning that began on Thursday will be concluded with a ceremony to remember politicians who were killed because they would not support the murderous regime that would plunge the country into the darkest period its history 28 years ago. As Rwandans began the National Week of Mourning of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, the night vigil was held in a special way due to COVID-19 pandemic with the help of various television and radio stations. The talk focused on mitigating depression and trauma during these difficult times as Rwandans remember over 1 million lives killed during the genocide against the Tutsi. The president of Ibuka Genocide Survivors Association, Egide Nguranga, says that as Rwandans enter the period of commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi, trauma is often on the rise. The leader of the Genocide Survivors Association called for psychological support from professionals during commemoration period. Still on Kwibuka commemoration events, as Rwanda and the world at large mark the 28th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, genocide survivors in Kigali say that April 7th is considered the beginning of a journey of persecution and loss of their family members. They say that they continue to work with other Rwandans on the country's development journey. John Mutoni has this report.
April 7th, 1994, the day after the shooting down of former Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana's plane. It was on this day that Mutabazi Martin, a 27-year-old at that time, who was residing in what was Kanombe commune and still living in that area today, said that this was when the genocide began officially with the participation of soldiers that were guarding the head of state, and that even before then, there were already signs of genocide.
That night, people that lived close to Habyarimana's house were all killed that very night, as most of them were Tutsi families, like Murasira, Liyasi, and others. On 7th, it was being rumored and said on the radio, as all the soldiers came out of the camp. The presidential guard were killing together with the locals, as there was a megaphone passing through on the 12th road saying no one should escape.
Not only in Kanombe area, but also in other parts of Kigali city, the Tutsi continue to be hunted, persecuted and killed from the early hours of April 7th. Uitije Alexandre, who lived at Sejem in Kigarama sector, which is now Kichukiro district, says that this day marks the beginning of the genocide, as all his family members were killed on that day.
Bullets were flying everywhere, the whistles, and we are living near the CDR youth living here at CGM called Imhoza Mugambi. The 7th left me with the worst memories because that's when I lost my whole family. Like I told you, we were a family of 9 people, and I'm the only one left. On that day, I saw people destroying our home. This house you're seeing was destroyed to the ground, and I rebuilt it. That's when I started running for my life, hiding, and that was the last time I slept, till the genocide was ended.
A document from the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement states that on April 7, 1994, there were attacks aimed at killing Tutsi who had taken refuge at the Amahoro Stadium, as it was surrounded by a UN force known as MINUAR in Center Christus in Remera, and that people were massacred in parts of Kanombe where more than 800 Tutsi were killed. Across Kigali city, the killings continued in Kachiru, Kimihurura, and in other parts of the country. It was also on this day that Prime Minister Agatha Uwiringiyimana, who was known for her anti-apartheid policies in the government, was assassinated. 11 belligerent soldiers on a UN mission in Rwanda known as MINUAR, as well as politicians who did not support the genocide plot, were killed on that date, such as Kavaruganda Joseph, who was in charge of constitutional protection, those who were leaders of opposition parties such as Nzamurambao Frederick of PSD, London Ndasingwa of PL, and others. In addition to the city of Kigali, Tutsi were massacred on April 7th all over the prefectures, such as in Gitarama, Gisenyi, Cyangugu, Ruhengeri, Kigali, and others, which is proof that the genocidal plot had been spread across the country beforehand. Genocide survivors say they are not burying themselves in sorrow, but have instead chosen to continue to work with others on the nation-building journey.
One thing that made me happy is that after the genocide had ended, we had an army to comfort us. I came and rebuilt this house, got married, and had children who are now graduates. I live a good life, and I am proud to have contributed to my country's development.
During the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, each region had its own experience up until when it ended, and the progress made in the reconstruction of the country has been commended. Jane Mutoni, RTV News.
Now, there are millions of stories of survival and resilience from Rwandans who survived the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Tonight, we bring you a story of one Nawiha Marie Chantal, who was left blind, orphaned, and with no siblings by the genocide against the Tutsi.
Nawiha Marie Chantal lives in Kinyinya sector in Gasabo district. She was born in Nyaruguru district in the southern province of Rwanda. The genocide against the Tutsi left her with no parents and siblings. She was 11 years old and she survived in Gatagara school where she was studying. She says that after the genocide, she lost hope of living. You can understand that it wasn't easy. I had different problems at the same time. I was blind and I was still young. I didn't know how to fight for myself, and I also didn't have someone to fight for me. It was very hard. I didn't love life back then. I always wondered why I even survived. Why am I even alive? Well, I continued my studies because the government of National Unity kept on supporting me, but I didn't want to study. But I kept on trying and finished my secondary school. In the course of her life, she faced so many challenges, including being blind and living by herself. Chantal refused to be overwhelmed with depression. She notes that there is a difference between where she was and where she is now. After high school, Nawiha Chantal found a job and started working. After high school, I started looking for a job regardless of people's understandings. At that time, I always tried to show my potential. I always told myself that whoever feels the necessity of hiring me will hire me. After I found a job with a contract of 1 year and a half. During the university studies, she started having a broader vision and thought that she was the only one responsible for her life. As I kept on growing mentally and also in age, I kept on expanding my thoughts to the point where I felt like I was the only person responsible for my life and nobody else. I reached to a point where I thought that I need to be bigger than my problems. God helped me and I finished my degree with good grades. Even though she has a bachelor's degree, she desires to continue her studies and also do a master's degree. I want to continue with my master's degree, but currently I don't have means. Chantal says that she still has a goal to find solutions that can move her life from one level to another better category. She also notes that she has an aim of helping others. Today I still have a goal to even reach further than where I am now. A goal to find solutions that can help me change, not staying where I am. And today, I'm not the Chantal that thinks only about herself. I feel the thirst of helping others. Chantal requested Rwandans to be united and also help survivors, especially in these times of commemorating. I want to start by strengthening Rwandans, especially those who survived and lost their loved ones. I believe that this genocide affected everyone who is Rwandan. So I urge everyone to stand strong and keep moving forward and remember, unite and renew by helping everyone who is still struggling, by comforting them and be with them throughout the journey of recovery, without complaining, because we people tend to complain. Nobody gets tired of the history. The history is ours. We have to live with it and support others to live it as it is. Rwanda is commemorating for the 28th time the genocide against the Tutsi, in which more than 1 million people lost their lives in only 100 days. The theme encourages Rwandans to remember, unite and renew. Olive Nete, RTV News.
It's a wrap, folks, for tonight. From me and the entire news production team, many thanks for your company tonight. During these 100 days of commemoration of the 1984 genocide against the Tutsi, may we continue to remember, unite, and renew. Peace to you all. I'm Ethan Tashobia. Bye for now.